So today was the day. Yep, I took my first flight lesson. I flew an actual real plane, and it was nothing like I expected. If you want to hear more, stick around. Hello, my name is Brandon, and I'm sharing my journey from 0 hours to becoming a professional pilot. Today was my very first lesson, and I've been waiting a while to get to this point. Let me take you through how my entire day went and what you can expect on your first flight lesson. First things first. So I meet my instructor at the airport and we begin something called a pre-flight. In this stage, you're pretty much inspecting the plane and making sure that everything is working properly on the plane, and you're making sure everything's aligned. You're checking every bolt, every nook and cranny on the plane because you're about to take it up in the sky. So you want to make sure that all the parts are functioning properly, all of the screws are tightened, that the plane has gas, that the tires are not flat on the plane. You take this whole list, it's called a pre-flight checklist, and you run through everything. You check the flaps, you check the ailerons, you check the controls to make sure they're free and clear. You check the tires, you check the engine oil. That's just a few things that you will be checking as you prepare to fly the plane. So after we completed our pre-flight inspection, the wings were good, the nose of the plane was good, everything on the plane was good. It was time to get in the plane. So we got in the plane and we did our before starting checklist. It was time to start the engine. So we started the engine. One thing that I learned very quickly is there are a lot of checklists, and rightfully so, because you're flying a plane and you want to make sure that everything is in order before you get that plane in the sky, because if there is an issue, you would rather find that issue on the ground rather than in the sky. I just want to reiterate, there is a lot of checklists in the process of flying an airplane, and I believe that's it's a great thing because it ensures safety and ensures that you are not skipping a step, and it ensures that you are doing everything you can to be safe for yourself and also others around you. After we did a start engine checklist, and that contains basic things like making sure the radios were checked, making sure that if we needed taxi clearance, we got that, making sure that the oil pressure was good, all of the engine gauges were good, making sure that the nav, all of the lights were on and things of that nature. And we didn't see anything out of whack. So after we completed our before taxi checklist and everything was good to go, we checked off everything, then we began taxiing the airplane. So my instructor gave me a brief overview of how to taxi the airplane, and what you do is you pretty much you taxi in by controlling the rudders and using your feet. So you're not touching the yoke at all when you're taxiing. You're just using your feet to control the rudders, and it was very tricky, getting used to, because you're so quick to driving. You kind of equate it to driving, so I was quick to have a hand on the yoke and turn left or turn right when that wasn't affecting anything at all. So just getting used to, but kind of after we taxied to our runway, and we held at our runway and we completed our before takeoff checklist. Pretty much that included making sure that our controls were still free and clear, making sure that our carb heat was good, making sure that we did a magneto check, making sure all of the oil pressures and the engine gauges were still good up to that point. And that's probably maybe the second or third time we even checked those things. So it's very repetitive when it comes to those checklists, just making sure as you go on and the plane is moving, you're still good and the plane is still operating properly. So we completed that before takeoff checklist, and it was time to take off. So it was time to take off. We were lined up on the runway on the center line, and took the throttle. My instructor gave me the freedom to, do this takeoff. Of course, he was there to assist me whenever I needed. And I, pushed the throttle up, 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, pushed it all the way up. I waited until the airspeed got up to about 60, 65 knots, and I began to pull back the pressure on the yoke, and suddenly after, the plane was up in the sky. So from that point, I'm just holding the nose to the horizon, and my instructor, is kind of just coaching me through it, making sure, I'm not pulling back too much, making sure I'm watching my airspeed, just making sure, I'm keeping my eyes outside of the plane and also, inside of the plane as well, but mostly on the outside, just making sure, because it is tricky to get fixated on the instruments on the inside of the plane, and you kind of ignore the outside. But as a private pilot, it's important that you keep that proper scans as you learning to fly a plane. After we got to about, I want to say 500 feet AGL, we did a climb checklist, just making sure that our speed was good pretty much, and making sure that we were, everything was still good on the plane as we began to climb. So we were climbing to 3,500 feet, and we were going to cruise at 3,500 feet. So my instructor, just kind of coached me through it, making sure I had my, the nose kissing the horizon as we continued to climb, and we got to 35,000 feet and we leveled out. After I get to my appropriate altitude of 3,500 feet, then from that point on, my instructor is talking to me and kind of walking me through straight and level flight, making sure that I'm keeping the plane steady, keeping the plane straight, making sure that I'm staying at altitude. And you hear that and you think it's so simple, but for me, it was a lot going on at one time. You're trying to keep the plane straight and level. You are hearing traffic on the radio and have to listen to the radios to make sure that you're clear of any traffic, and if anybody is staying where they are in the area, making sure you're looking out of the plane, making sure that you have eyes on them, while also making sure that everything's good on the inside of the plane, making sure that the airspeed is good, making sure that the altitude is appropriate, making sure that everything, you're still straight and level from the horizon. So it was a lot, of sensations going on at one time that I wasn't really used to, and it can definitely become overwhelming if it's something that you're not used to. But that's where your instructor comes in. They're able to kind of walk you through, able to allow you to pull back, and just maybe step back for a few seconds as they take over for a second, just to kind of get yourself together. But that's why your instructor is there. So from that point on, we're cruising at 3,500 feet, and we was probably up for about maybe, I would say, 45 minutes to an hour, just practicing straight and level, practicing simple turns, and we made our way back to the airport. So we put our heading in for our home airport, and we began to head back to the airport. So after we began to head back to the airport, we were about 10 miles out, and that's when my instructor, gave me the freedom to make radio calls. So he would tell me what to say, and pretty much I would just repeat after him on the radio. So it wasn't it's not a tower airport where my home airport is, and where I'm training out of. So it's untowered. So pretty much we're making the calls to the traffic around the airport and in the area. We made a call at 10 miles out. We made it as we descend the airplane to the appropriate altitude, which was 1,800 feet for our specific airport, which is our traffic pattern altitude. So we began to descend the plane to 1,800 feet, and 5 miles out, made another call. We're pretty much telling the traffic, everybody around us, hey, we're 5 miles out and we're coming in at this direction, and we're coming to land at this runway, pretty much. So we did that, got 5 miles out, and that's where pretty much my instructor took over because, of course, this was my first time. I had no idea how to land the plane, and from my instructor's point of view and a lot of other people I've talked to, landing the plane is one of the most challenging things. So of course it's not something that you're going to do on your first lesson. So but while my hands were on the controls, my feet were on the rudder pedals, my instructor walked me through what he's doing, when he's doing it, and when he's pulling the flaps, what speed we should be at. So he's definitely walking me through as we begin to land. So we land the airplane. Great landing by my instructor, 10 out of 10. I definitely greased that on. And we complete our after landing checklist. After we complete that after landing checklist, then we taxi back on. And at this point, I'm have full control of the plane, taxiing to our hangar. After we taxi to our hangar, get the airplane positioned correctly, then we secure the aircraft by doing our final checklist. That point on, that completes my first flight lesson. So pretty much after the lesson, me and my instructor debriefed. We talked about the flight. He asked me, how I felt, how was I feeling, how did I think I did, and for me, my honest reaction to the first flight, it was just a lot of sensations going on at once, things I was doing that my mind was not used to. And when we landed and taxied back to the hangar, honestly, my mind was like fried. That's probably the best way that I can describe it. My mind was fried. My mind was like, man, what did you just do to me? Like, what is going on? And it was just an overwhelming feeling that I felt, after completing my first lesson. And of course, my instructor told me, hey, that's normal. That's how you're supposed to feel. This is your first time, actually, engaging in things that you've never done or seen before. So it's very common for you to feel, how you felt today. So a few takeaways from my first flight lesson. One, the amount of checklists that are involved with flying a plane. And that's something I did not know and was not aware of, but it's something that I definitely appreciate because it shows the importance of safety, and how important it is to follow your checklist, and not rush through them, because it can, I need to keep that in mind, because as I become more comfortable with the checklist and I kind of know it off the top of my head, it's still important that I, check everything and not rush through anything, as I continue to go through my checklist. Another thing that I took away is how maybe difficult it is to keep the plane coordinated, which is basically what we worked on for our first lesson, that straight and level flight, just trying to keep the plane straight. At times I lost altitude, I was descending, I was climbing, so it's just important to keep that coordination. And I know, as I get more familiar with the plane, I will, become better at coordinating the plane better, with my turns and keeping the plane straight and things of that nature. So that's definitely another takeaway from my flight lesson. So overall, it was a great experience. I have been looking forward to this for a while. And, I was just glad I was able to actually get up in the plane for my first lesson with my instructor. And, I can't wait for the next one. In that, I want to stay transparent on my channel, as always. In my first flight lesson, I also want to cover the cost of what I spent for my first flight lesson. The airplane that I rented for my training was a Piper Archer. It was $126.50 for 1.1 hours. So I rented the plane dry. That pretty much means fuel was not included, which means I had to pay for the fuel of the plane, and the fuel cost was $45.63. That was for 7 gallons of fuel. And my instructor charges $50 an hour for his fee. Total time with my instructor, it was about 2 hours if you include the the pre-flight, because it did take us a while to go through the pre-flight, since it was my first time. You include the flying time, and you can include the debrief. That was 2 hours of his time, so I paid him $100 for my instructor fee. And if you add that all up, that comes to $272.13, and that's how much I spent on my first flight lesson. So if you're chasing this dream too, or you just want to follow me along, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make sure you like, so we can get this content out to more people. And hey, if you got a first flight story, tell us about it in the comments. Let's start a conversation about what you experienced through your first flight. Thank y'all for watching. Peace and blessings.